Welcome, my weird witches. You've found Raven's Lorecast, where folklore, fire, and a little fierce honesty all meet in the same cauldron. I'm Raven Lorekeeper, storyteller, witch, and your unapologetic guide through myth, magic, and all the places the world told you not to wander. This podcast exists because magic deserves to be honest, witchcraft deserves to be inclusive, and every one of us who grew up other deserves a place to finally exhale. So pour yourself something comforting, settle in, and remember, the world may not have been built for us, but the magic was. There is a moment just before dawn when the world hasn't decided which way it's turning. The cold still holds the fields. The night still presses close. And yet, something underneath is waking up. Imbolc is that moment. Not the blaze of spring, not the riot of green, just the first warmth under the ash. The quiet breath that says, "You endured." This is the hinge of the year, the quickening, the return of light, not as spectacle, but as promise. And today, the Manor moved. Not with thunder, not with fanfare, but with that soft, impossible shift it makes when the world itself needs to change location. One heartbeat. We were still held in northern twilight, in ice and silence and the long vigilance of Yule. And then the doors opened onto Mediterranean dawn, warm stone beneath bare feet, olive trees stirring in the breeze, milk heating gently on the hearth, a white dove waiting on the sill, as though she had always known we were coming. The Manor knows the seasons. It knows where the stories are kept. And for Imbolc, it brought us south, to the lands of oil and grain, poetry and flame, where winter loosens its grip not with drama, but with discipline and care. Because Imbolc is not about sudden rebirth. It is about continuation. It is the season of lambing and pruning, of checking stores, of tending fires more carefully, not less, of knowing that survival has shifted from endurance to stewardship. Long before calendars and pantheons, humans marked this threshold. They watched the light change. They felt the soil soften. They noticed the return of milk, the swelling of seed, the lengthening of days. Some would later call this Bridget. Some would name her Flame, or Forge, or Healing Hand. Others would recognize her only as necessity, the fire that could not go out, the warmth that had to be protected at all costs. Names change. The work does not. Imbolc honors the small lights, the guarded embers, the quiet courage it takes to keep going when the world is still cold and the future is not yet certain. This is not a Sabbat of glory. It is a Sabbat of grit. It belongs to those who made it through winter, the ones outside and the ones inside. So today, witch, we do not rush the season. We do not demand bloom before its time. We honor what has endured. Take a breath. Let it be steady. Let it be warm. Feel the light returning, not all at once, but enough. Enough to continue. Enough to tend what matters. Enough to begin again slowly and with intention. Welcome, bright one. Welcome to Imbolc. Welcome to Raven's Lorecast. Wit, wisdom, witchcraft. We begin. Weird ones, the Manor has settled again. not with the creaking, ice-bound vigilance of the Arctic this time, but with a long, warm exhale, the kind the earth makes in late winter when it hasn't decided whether to sleep a little longer or wake. The Mediterranean is waking, not dramatically, not all at once, but unmistakably. This is important because Imbolc does not begin in celebration. It begins in assessment. Before festivals, before gods are named, before poetry, people looked at the land and asked a very simple question. Did we survive the winter? And if the answer was yes, even barely, that was enough to mark the moment as sacred. One of the great disservices modern paganism has done to Imbolc is shrinking it into a single cultural lane. Because long before Ireland named it, people across the Mediterranean basin recognized the same threshold. They just described it in their own languages, with their own foods, their own stones, their own skies. From the Western Mediterranean to the Levant, late winter marked the first lambing season, the return of milk, pruning of olive and fig trees, longer days for work and travel, the moment households shifted from endurance to management. This was not poetic abstraction. This was survival math. Here's your first, wait, I didn't know that moment. Those spiral carvings we associate with Celtic sites, they are everywhere in the Mediterranean. Malta, Sardinia, Iberia, Mycenaean Greece, Anatolia, the Levant, spirals carved into stone near entrances, hearths, and burial sites. Not decorative, cosmological. The spiral marked the womb, the turning year, the return of light, the belief that life does not move in straight lines. Many Mediterranean structures were oriented not to solstices, but to late winter light. The subtle shift when dawn arrives just enough earlier to be noticed. This is Imbolc logic without the name. In colder northern climates, spring announces itself with thaw and green. In the Mediterranean, it announced itself with milk. Ewes and goats began lactating before the land was visibly fertile. That first milk meant animals survived, reproduction was successful, nourishment was returning. This is why Imbolc, or in the belly, is not uniquely Irish. It describes an agricultural reality shared across regions. Milk was poured on stones, shared at hearths, offered to deities and ancestors. It was not abundance, it was enough. Another moment people don't realize: honey, olive oil, and flame form a sacred triad across the Mediterranean. Honey, symbol of preservation and divine sweetness, offered to goddesses of renewal from Greece to the Levant, one of the few foods that never spoils. Olive oil, food, medicine, light, and ritual substance, used to anoint births, deaths, and transitions. Trees that regenerate after fire, war, and cutting. Fire, tended carefully, not extravagantly. Hearth-centered, not theatrical. Associated with continuity, not conquest. This is why Imbolc altars across the region look quiet. They are practical sanctity. Now let's talk about places that are too often left out. In the coastal Levant, including what we now call Lebanon, late winter rites centered on agricultural renewal, fertility of both land and people, offerings tied to Venus-associated goddesses like Astarte. These were not grand temple festivals yet. These were household rites, Women marked the return of milk. Families assessed stores. Oil lamps were cleaned and relit. Spring was not a party, it was a responsibility. In Anatolia, modern Turkey, early spring rituals honored mountain mothers, hearth goddesses, protectors of animals and grain. Here's another didn't know that moment. Many Anatolian goddesses were not seasonal queens. They were continuity figures, ensuring life did not collapse during transition. This is Imbolc's job. Not resurrection, continuation. Brigid belongs here, but as part of a lineage, not its origin. She is one voice in a chorus of returning light figures. Hestia, guarding the hearth. Demeter, marking the first stirrings. Hathor, as milk bringer. Astarte, tied to dawn and fertility. Different lands, same moment. This doesn't dilute Brigid, it contextualizes her. Across the Mediterranean, people noticed the same thing. Days lengthened by minutes, animals stirred, sap rose, birds shifted their songs. They called this the quickening. Not growth yet, just movement. Spiritually, this is the moment when a human being realizes, I am not done. Not healed, not transformed, but still alive. Winter killed people. That's not poetic. That's historical. So Imbolc celebrations were small, domestic, grateful. 3 flames, not bonfires. Milk and honey, not feasts. Prayers whispered, not proclaimed. The holiness was in survival. Return to the image of the altar. Stone, milk, honey, olive, flame, dawn. This is not decoration. This is a map of endurance. And that is the Mediterranean Imbolc legacy. Not triumph, not conquest, but continuation. Imbolc does not ask you to bloom. It asks you to notice what survived. What spark stayed lit? What part of you is stirring again? What is asking, quietly, for care? That is ancient wisdom. That is Mediterranean wisdom. That is Imbolc. And that is the lore. Look up tonight, bright ones. The sky is not subtle. It is not whispering. This sky is ancient memory stirring, because Imbolc arrives this year beneath a full moon in Leo, the snow moon, the hunger moon, the moon of the returning heart. And for the peoples of the Mediterranean world, this mattered deeply. This was not just a full moon. This was a threshold moon, a signal written in light that winter's grip was breaking and the authority of the sun was preparing to rise again. Let's step into it carefully and correctly. On February 1st, 2026, the moon reaches its full phase at 5:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, rising already complete as night falls. This is the snow moon, named not for beauty, but for survival. Snow still covered fields. Cold still bit deep. Stores were thin. In the Mediterranean, this moon was not about abundance. It was about endurance and promise. And this year, that full moon is in Leo. Leo is not just confidence or creativity. In ancient cosmology, Leo was solar fire, the guardian of kingship, vitality, courage, and divine right. A full moon in Leo speaks to the heart returning to itself, the reawakening of personal vitality, courage after contraction, the refusal of the inner flame to go out. This is not loud fire. This is banked fire, embers glowing after the longest cold. Imbolc has always been about that moment. Not spring yet, but no longer winter's dominion. Leo gives that moment a heart. Now we turn to one of the most important and most overlooked pieces of this sky, Regulus, the brightest star in the constellation Leo. Regulus means the little king. It is one of the 4 royal stars of Persia, known across ancient cultures as a watcher of the heavens. For Mediterranean and Near Eastern peoples, Regulus was associated with divine authority, solar power, rightful leadership, cosmic order, the returning strength of the sun. And here's where this gets extraordinary. In antiquity, Regulus aligned with the gaze of the great Sphinx at Giza, rising at dawn near the equinoxes during earlier epochs. The Sphinx, lion-bodied, solar guardian, was not just a monument, it was a celestial marker tied to the lion, the sun, and kingship reborn. So when we speak of a Leo full moon near Regulus, we are speaking the language of ancient sky priests. The heart of the lion is awake. The sun remembers its throne. Order is preparing to return. At Imbolc, when light first reasserts itself, this symbolism is not coincidence. It is continuity. While the moon blazes in Leo, the sun is in Aquarius. This matters. Aquarius, in ancient terms, is not detachment. It is restructuring. It governs collective renewal, new systems, social bonds, the future beyond survival, the reimagining of how humans live together. In Mediterranean seasonal logic, Aquarius marked the end of isolation. The rains fed reservoirs. Communal life began stirring again. So this sky sets up a sacred polarity. Leo moon is the heart, vitality, identity, fire. The Aquarius sun is the future, the people, the vision, the world ahead. This is not conflict, it is ignition. Imbolc is the festival of first light, and this sky says, let the heart wake up first so the future can follow. Now we address Saturn, because we must. Saturn is in Pisces, not opposing the moon by degree, but weighing the season with its presence. Saturn carries endurance, discipline, hardship, the lessons of time. In Pisces, Saturn speaks of emotional weight, grief, sacrifice, and spiritual exhaustion. This is the winter that shaped you. But here's the key. Imbolc is not about denying that weight. It is about no longer living inside it. Saturn says, you learned what you needed. The Leo moon answers, now let me live. This is not forgetting winter. It is outgrowing it. The snow moon was also called the hunger moon. Food was scarce. Energy was low. Hope had to be chosen. This moon asks a hard ancient question. What are you starving for? Not metaphorically, truly. Warmth, creativity, rest, meaning, connection, safety, joy, expression. In Mediterranean ritual life, hunger was not shameful. It was informational. Hunger meant life still wanted to continue. The moon doesn't promise fulfillment. It promises direction. Now return to the altar imagery we've been building. Milk in clay bowls, honey catching moonlight, olive branches, evergreen and resilient, small flames against cold air, the quiet presence of animals and hearth. Under a Leo full moon, these offerings take on solar meaning. Milk is returning life. Honey is preservation and sweetness earned. Olive is peace after endurance. And fire is the sun remembered. This is Imbolc as the Mediterranean knew it. Not spring, not winter, but the moment the light proves it survived. Now let's partake in a simple sky ritual. No tools, no performance. Step outside or to a window. Place one hand on your heart. Say quietly, or just think to yourself, what part of me survived the winter? What part of me wants to live again? What weight can I finally set down? Now look at the moon. You don't need answers tonight, just honesty. So let's say this plainly. This is a night of solar memory. The Leo moon says your fire was never gone. Regulus says the old light still knows your name. Aquarius says the future is asking for you. And Imbolc says begin again, but gently. This is not spectacle. This is continuity. The fire returns, the heart remembers, and the light, quiet, stubborn, ancient, begins again. Imbolc is a threshold Sabbat, not quite winter, not quite spring. A hinge in the wheel where everything is still quiet on the surface, but something deeper has begun to stir. And tonight, in the kitchen witchery, we honor that dual nature with a two-part feast. One sweet dish for the returning light, one savory dish for the returning life. Because Imbolc isn't a single note, it's a chord, warm, bright, awakening, and layered. Kitchen witchery is always the part of the Sabbat where we leave the mythic world for a moment and return to the body. Your hands, your breath, the simple truth of ingredients becoming nourishment. But for Imbolc, especially the Mediterranean-rooted Imbolc we're walking into, the kitchen is not a break from the magic. It is the magic. Our first dish are honey oatcakes with golden raisins and carob. Let's talk about why these ingredients belong to Imbolc. Oats represent endurance in grain form. Oats are one of the oldest cultivated grains in Europe and the Mediterranean rim. They grow in cold soil. They thrive on very little. They store well through long winters. Symbolically, oats are resilience, sustenance, the body's quiet strength. We will get through this. When you bake with oats at Imbolc, you're not making a snack. You're honoring survival. Almond milk is Mediterranean purification. Milk is central to Imbolc. It's built into the etymology of the Sabbat. But almond milk? That's a nod to the climates where almond trees blossom even when snow still crowns the mountains. Almonds are the first trees to flower in Mediterranean late winter, symbols of early hope, living proof that life returns before conditions seem favorable. Almond milk is a blessing disguised as a pantry item. Honey is sweetness beyond scarcity. Honey is ancient magic, used in Greek rites of renewal, Egyptian funerary blessings, Anatolian spring offerings, Levantine dawn rituals, Roman festivals of returning light. Honey is a symbol of divine favor, rebirth, joy returning after hardship, sweetness preserved through winter. Every spoonful is a prayer for gentler days. Olive oil is liquid sunlight. No ingredient says Mediterranean spring like olive oil. Olive trees survive drought, storm, war, blight, fire, and regrow stronger. Olive oil is healing, illumination, protection, resilience, blessing. A drop in your batter is a drop of perseverance. Golden raisins are summer preserved. These are little sunbursts, tiny bits of stored solar energy, as if you folded last year's warmth into your winter hands. Golden raisins symbolize preserved hope, the promise of better seasons, sweetness that outlasts scarcity. And carob, that's ancient sweetness, humble abundance. Carob is older than chocolate in Europe. It grows easily. It feeds many. It asks almost nothing in return. Carob represents humble joy, accessible sweetness, the magic of enough, community, nourishment, and care. Every ingredient in these cakes tells a story about what it means to endure the winter and still rise soft, warm, and hopeful. You don't have to be precise. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a baker. You just have to show up. This recipe is meant to be forgiving, like the season itself. Here's the structure. 2 cups of oats, 1.5 cups almond milk, 3 tablespoons honey, a drop or 2 of olive oil, a half teaspoon baking powder or soda, a pinch of salt, a half cup carob chips or dark chocolate if dairy is okay, half cup golden raisins. Here's the ritual woven into the recipe. Simple, ancient, and deeply Imbolc. As you pour the oats, whisper, strength that kept me alive. As the almond milk hits the bowl, may hope blossom early in me. As the honey ribbons through, sweetness is returning. As the olive oil glints, I rise again brighter than before. As you add raisins and carob, I welcome small joys back into my life. This isn't theatrics. This is intention-infused nourishment. This is magic you can eat. You mix them until it feels right. Not watery, not doughy, just a thick, spoonable batter. And as you stir, you're not just combining ingredients. You're waking up the part of you that survived winter and is ready for sweetness again. Because kitchen witchery isn't about precision. It's about presence. As you stir, ask yourself, what warmth is returning to me? What part of me is hungry for joy? What small sweetness have I denied myself? What do I want to taste again after a long, cold season? Your mixing bowl becomes an altar. Your spoon becomes a wand. Your hands become the priestess. Spoon into a lined or greased muffin pan and bake at 350 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. When these cakes bake, something subtle shifts. Not in the oven, in you. The kitchen fills with warm sweetness, honey and oats, the earliest flavors of spring. You can almost feel the Mediterranean dawn from that altar image settling into your home. The milk bowl glowing, the honeycomb glistening, the dove watching the horizon, the olive branches resting like prayers. You are recreating that altar with your senses. You are inviting that light into your home. You are stepping into the moment when winter begins to loosen its hold. That smell is the quickening. The oatcakes anchor the light side of the feast, the sweetness that greets the newborn sun, softness, warmth, nourishment. The kind of simple, sacred food our ancient kin would have made to bless the season. You whisk, you fold, you bake, and the whole house fills with a kind of golden hush. These cakes are the edible version of a candle flame, and when the first one cools enough to tear open with your fingers, it tastes like a promise. The dark is ending, the light is returning. But Imbolc is not only about sweetness. It is about awakening, heat returning to the body of the world, roots beginning to stretch, seeds remembering themselves. So now, we turn to the savory side of the spell. A hearty vegan Sabbat dinner. Sweet meets flame, winter meets awakening. This dish is Imbolc itself. Humble winter vegetables transformed by fire, tossed with beans and herbs and olives until the whole thing becomes a feast bright enough to wake the ancestors. Gather 2 to 3 zucchini chopped into half moons, 1 red bell pepper chopped, 1 sweet onion sliced, 1 whole garlic bulb, 1 cup grape tomatoes, 1 can chickpeas drained, 1 can kidney beans drained, olive oil, salt and black pepper, fresh basil chopped, dried oregano, crushed red pepper flakes, a healthy pinch, lemon zest or juice, half a cup of chopped green olives, Castelvetrano preferred. Set your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. On a baking sheet, scatter your zucchini, onion, red pepper, and grape tomatoes. Slice the top off of a whole garlic bulb, drizzle it with olive oil, and tuck it into the corner of the tray. Drizzle the vegetables generously with olive oil, salt and pepper, and a pinch of oregano. Slide the tray into the heat. This is Imbolc in action. Winter softened ingredients meeting flame, transforming into something alive again. Roast for about 25 to 30 minutes until the edges caramelize and the tomatoes burst and the garlic perfume slips into every corner of your kitchen. The moment you open the oven door, you'll understand why fire is the sacred element of this Sabbat. In a wide skillet, heat a swirl of olive oil. Add the chickpeas, kidney beans, a pinch of crushed red pepper flakes, lemon zest or a squeeze of juice, a scatter of dried oregano. Warm them until the beans glisten and begin to drink in the spices. Then squeeze the roasted garlic cloves right out of their papery skins into the skillet. Soft, sweet, molten, holy. Stir. Let everything meet everything else. Now add your roasted vegetables. Let them tumble into the beans like returning travelers. Toss gently until it all becomes one glossy, fragrant, flame-kissed dish. Taste. Adjust. A little more lemon, a whisper more salt. Your senses will tell you. Turn off the heat. Fold in chopped fresh basil. Right before serving, top everything with chopped green olives. This last touch snaps the dish awake, bright, briny, alive. The exact energy of Imbolc rising from beneath the winter soil. This is a meal of memory and movement, of stillness and stirring. A feast that honors the Mediterranean lands where Imbolc carries different names, but the same essential fire. And when you pair it with the sweet oatcakes, You get both halves of the Sabbat, sweetness for the light, sustenance for the life returning. Light and life, sun and seed, flame and earth. A true Imbolc feast. When the cooking is done, when your kitchen is warm and fragrant and alive with color, pause for a moment. This wasn't just food. This was invocation. Roasting, stirring, tasting, blessing. It's all part of the same magic our ancestors used to coax spring from the sleeping world. Place your hand on the counter, the warm skillet, or the cutting board dusted with basil. Take a breath. Whisper, "This is the light I kept alive." Because you did. Through darkness, through winter, through all the quiet seasons of your own becoming, you kept something glowing. Tonight's feast honors that. And now, with warmth in your hands and sweetness on your tongue, we move to the convocation. As we close this Imbolc journey, I want you to take a slow breath with me. Not the kind that forces calm, but the kind that acknowledges what it took to get here. Winter is never just a season. It's the stretch of time when you learn what you're made of. It's the dark that asks questions you don't always want to answer. It's the quiet where old fears get loud. And still, here you are. Here you are at Imbolc, the moment when the light returns, not because everything is fixed, but because you refused to go out. That's the truth of this Sabbat. The fire doesn't roar back all at once. It rises because something inside you held the match through the cold and said, "Not yet, I'm not done." Tonight, I want you to honor that small light you kept alive. Not the dramatic flames, not the victories other people can see. The ember inside you that stayed warm when everything else felt frozen. That ember is your magic. And now, as the season shifts and the sun lifts earlier each morning, it's time to feed it. So here's your invitation. Simple, honest, and deeply Imbolc. Light one small candle. Sit where you can see its glow and whisper to yourself, "I made it through the winter. My light never left me. I rise with the returning sun." Let it land. Let it echo. And as that echo settles, listen. Let it become a promise you'll remember when the world gets loud again. This year is going to ask things of you: courage, softness, truth-telling, boundaries, beginnings. But tonight, you don't have to figure out the whole path. Just take one step toward warmth. One step toward the version of you that's ready to grow again. Imbolc is the quickening, the stirring, the first pulse of something new under the frost. Trust it. Trust yourself. Trust the light you kept burning with your bare hands. And if you want to return to the kitchen work we shared tonight, the food as ritual, the nourishment as spell, you'll find all of my kitchen witchery recipes gathered in one place on Pinterest, waiting whenever you need them. Thank you for spending this time with me, for letting my voice into your home, your heart, your ritual space. If this episode touched something in you, please spread the word. Share the podcast. Invite someone into the circle. Help this little flame reach the people who need it. As always, to the returning light and wit, wisdom, witchcraft. Thank you, my weird witches, for giving me a little of your time and your beautiful attention today. If this episode stirred something in you, a memory, a spark, a question, a fire, please share it. Spread the word. That's how our circle grows. You can find me on socials at Ravens Lorecast on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky, and at Ravens_lore_cast on Instagram and Threads. And if you've got a question, a story, a spellcraft request, or just the world's cutest familiar photo, email me at raven@ravenslorecast.com. I really do read them. Until next time, keep your fire tended, your humor wicked, and your heart brave and wide open. This is Raven Lorekeeper, signing off with love, grit, and a whisper of magic on your path.